given the opportunity to present on water conservation efforts and what the International Code Council is doing. So last year, actually, we developed the International Water Conservation Code Provisions document. And this document is 100% adoptable, just like the rest of our family of solutions. So in the IWCCP, we address both commercial buildings and residential. We have separated out the code into residential and commercial sections with certain indicators to let the user be aware of what section they're in. So commercial is going to be preceded by a abbreviation of CW. Residential will be preceded by the abbreviation of RW. This way, everybody always knows where they're at. So we also, in order to develop this document and not have to go through a full code development cycle like ICC normally does, what we did is one of my coworkers went through and did a deep dive throughout our entire family of solutions. We may have communities out there that may not want to go full-blown green construction code or full-blown International Energy Conservation Code provisions, but have a lot of concerns about water conservation. So this book pulls all the water conservation efforts in from across our family of solutions. So we look at the IECC, the Energy Conservation Code for our commercial provisions, as well as our residential provisions, our international plumbing code for things like limiting the distance of hot water from the hot water source to 50 foot. And then, like I mentioned earlier, the IECC provisions for specific fixtures that have to be less in footage from that hot water source to the fixture location. So like for a public lavatory, we're really concerned with how much water is going down the drain while we're waiting on hot water to get to that fixture, because that's water conservation, that's energy use, that's our jurisdictions, our water purveyors having to treat water to the level of potable and then spend money delivering it just for it to go down the drain and with no real use. So limiting that source, that distance really helps. I guess I should have started with my introduction, and I apologize. But my name is Rich Anderson. As I was introduced, I am Director of PMG Technical Resources with the International Code Council. I am one of 5 directors in the U.S., and I oversee our efforts in the Western U.S., and I live in Northern Colorado. I have a long history working in Texas and New Mexico and Oklahoma, being an ex-contractor from the Texas Panhandle. So kind of went in all those states, but I do cover Texas, New Mexico, Arizona, Utah, Oregon, Washington, California, Hawaii, Alaska, and Guam for our PMG efforts. And for PMG, we talk anything that has to do with our plumbing codes, our mechanical code, fuel gas code, swimming pool and spa code, and private sewage disposal code. And of course, where those particular provisions overlap with our green construction code or our international family of codes anywhere. So we felt that the development of this document was needed for the industry to have a resource that contains all water conservation and hot water energy related provisions in the 2021 codes. By just pulling in all of these into one holistic water conservation code, our hopes were to help communities, and they wouldn't have to do a deep dive into those codes to figure out what they needed to adopt locally for water conservation efforts. So it includes the IPC, the IRC, the International Energy Conservation Code, and a lot of our International Green Construction Code, as well as ASHRAE Standard 189.1 provisions. 2 important resources that are included in full in this document. One are going to be our landscape sprinkler emitter standard. The other is going to be the ANSI ResNet ICC 850 2020 standard for calculation and labeling of water use performance in 1 and 2 family dwellings. So we're looking at, giving them a water rating index. And this was a standard that ICC and ResNet developed together. We have excerpts from water conservation included from the ICC 700 in it, just to name a few. Basic layout is here for everybody to see. I'm not going to get down into the weeds of each section due to time, but I will provide a copy of this PowerPoint in a handout form. I'll probably just stick it in the chat as soon as I'm done for everybody to see. The IWCCP is founded on all of those principles in the scope of water conservation throughout our family of solutions. Adequately protect public health for safety and welfare. Provisions do not unnecessarily increase construction costs. They don't restrict the use of new materials or products or methods of construction, and we do not give preferential treatment to a particular type class materials of methods of construction. We achieve this by comprehensive provisions that are enforceable, usable, and adoptable. And like all of our family of codes, they will work holistically with the rest of our codes. The IWCCP will. As I mentioned, we have commercial and residential provisions. Occupancy classifications going to be determined with IBC. Commercial provisions only apply to occupancies other than single-family dwellings and multifamily dwellings that are 3 stories in height or less. So if we take the way we're classifying residential and commercial in this code, it's really going to mirror a lot of what we currently do in the International Energy Conservation Code, where we look at like R2 occupancies less than 3 stories in height as a residential building. Same concept here. Residential provisions apply to residential occupancies that are also applicable to the IRC. Section numbers, it kind of lets you know jurisdictional option with JO. Here's chapter 1, and as you can see as we go through these next slides, and I'm going to move through them kind of quick because of time, but you can see where we pulled certain things. So scope and general requirements are almost will mirror the green construction code in chapter 1. And then chapter 2, we've pulled some things from the IPC, as you can see here. A little indicator here, just how we did general definitions so that people know where they came from. You see IPC here for backflow preventer, biodiverse plantings. That's a direct definition from the green construction code. This is just an example of how we pulled all that together. General regulations, chapter 3, we like to do a bunch of general regs that don't apply specifically always in our codes. Now we have our commercial chapter here for chapter 4. And then just some sections here that I'm going to, once again, give a copy of this PowerPoint for everybody to review. General regulations on hot water for commercial. As you can see, a lot of this came from the IECC. And then we have non-potable water systems for commercial. Those are pulled directly from chapter 13 of the IPC. And then we have our subsurface gray water absorption system. That's going to be a direct reference from chapter 14 of the IPC. We have plumbing administration for residential, same concept. This is how we separated them out. You'll see that we get through IRC stuff. Just an example of what we put in. So RW1001.1 is a direct quote from the IRC on 2601.1. Here, going through hot water again. And we have some appendices within it. Once again, those direct ones that are completely include the ICC 700. And we have the 850 also. The 802 for the landscape emitter stuff. And I don't want to take up too much time because I know we're limited. But one thing I did want to kind of address real quick with everybody is last week in Orlando, Florida, the culmination of the ICC Water Reuse Working Group for 2 code proposals. 157 Part 1 and 2 both passed our code development committee, and it will be a total revamp of Chapter 13 and our residential provisions for on-site water reuse. We're going to be introducing in the 2027 codes log reduction targets, log reduction values, log reduction credits. And right now the code tells us that we need to treat to the level of intended use, but we do not tell you what that intended use is. The 2027 code proposal that was worked on with the Water Reuse Working Group includes all that. And we had over 100 individual participants from around the country helping us with that. We had private manufacturing. We had representation from the EPA's RAP program, their Water Reuse Action program, specifically action item 2.18 to improve codes and standards. And then we had representation from the National Blue Ribbon Commission to help us come up with all of these code provisions to make basically toilet to tap possible in codes without everybody having to do a bunch of alternative methods of compliances. So that's probably my time. And anybody have any questions for me?
Well, thank you, Richard. I appreciate you coming and joining, and I especially appreciate, as someone who knows little to nothing about building codes, how clearly you explained all of that. So it looks like we've got at least Jonathan's got a question, and everyone else, please think about what you might want to ask Richard while we have him here.
Go ahead, Jonathan.
Oh, sure. So as we're embarking upon this ambitious project to get the building codes changed in some way in our region, are there particular things that you think that we should just view as like kind of, I don't want to say non-negotiable because everything's always negotiable, but is there like a baseline where we should just say, you know, this is really where we should be at, and we shouldn't be willing to sort of compromise past that point? And should we think in terms of like adherence to particular standard, a particular amount of water use, or a particular approach? Like, it's sort of like, is it a question of like sort of measuring something a particular way, or is there a way of thinking about this or approaching it that might help us get where we want to go?
If I say yes, yes, and yes, is that enough? But I mean, Jonathan, those are really great questions. And what we at the International Code Council like to do with our national model codes is to develop solutions that aren't necessarily one size fits all, right? We want to provide options in the built environment. Water conservation is just another one of those realms where we want to provide options. You know, a lot of the energy code now is getting away from, let's say, prescriptive requirements. But what we want to look at really is the performance of the building, the overall performance, the overall energy use to include water consumption. So in certain areas of the country, obviously, water scarcity and water conservation is more prevalent than others. So for those regions, that's one of the reasons we developed this code. And I can talk about this for like hours, Jonathan. So if you want to talk offline, great. I'd love to help develop whatever we have to develop. Kind of a non-answer, but it's really kind of what we're doing at ICC is just to give communities options, viable solutions for these complex problems, and codified things where they don't have to do all of the heavy lifting and the work locally, right? Rely on us, our national stakeholders, to help you and learn. I always like to take things from other people, and I always like to hear what their failures were, so I didn't repeat them. You know what I mean? Those are always, you know, when you're working with somebody, Jonathan, and they say, don't do this because this was the problem. That's what I love to hear, you know? So I think we have one more hand up.
Nina?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Nina?
I just have a quick question. I'm with Coconino County, and I'm just wondering if you have any idea how many jurisdictions have adopted this code, and, you know, what kind of jurisdictions?
So right now, because really we only published this about 6 months ago.
Okay.
We have not seen a big, huge adoption effort, but with what we did at the National Press Club last month and the report that we worked on, or that University of Miami worked on, to couple with this, we're really hoping to get more communities to at least look at it, maybe for guidance, even if they don't want to adopt it in its entirety. Hey, it's got some really good stuff in it, and it's all right there for you.
Yeah, I mean, do you think adopting as a voluntary kind of approach? Because I know with the IGCC, sometimes jurisdictions do that.
Well, and our intention was to help communities that really are concerned with water conservation by giving them a fully adoptable document that pulls in everything from our entire family of solutions for those communities that don't want to go full blown green construction code, keeping that as what we often refer to as a stretch code or an option in code, right? Our hopes are that this will be adopted by communities that are seriously concerned with water conservation, right?
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Nina.
This is Harold from New Mexico. Can you hear me?
Yes, Harold.
How does it blend in with like the WERS and WEIR programs, that the home builders have? And I know that Santa Fe, we developed a local program years ago. How does it work with those standards?
I don't have an answer of how this is going to tie in with any current locality. We did make sure that, like in all of our codes, we include the sections that talk about how this code shall not supersede any local, state, or federal requirement. That's inherent throughout our family of solutions because we definitely don't want to cause any conflicts there. So that is in this document already, Harold. Whereabouts in New Mexico are you, Harold?
In Santa Fe, years ago, they adopted a local program. Yes. And then of course you have the national home builders version, right? Because we get those in our sustainable building tax credit. They're used to qualify for a credit. So I'm just wondering how similar they are or dissimilar, or if somehow they're referenced in the ICC. I think that's a good thing for you to have developed, because I think we could look forward to maybe implementing it in our state.
Yeah, actually, Harold, I wish we would have talked yesterday because I literally flew home from Santa Fe this morning to be here. I had a meeting yesterday with Martine and then Renee at the fire marshal's office. So that's why I was there.
Great. Well, that's great. I'm glad you informed Martine, because he's the one that's really responsible for adopting codes. And we work a lot with him to get new codes adopted.
Yeah, we had just a meeting yesterday to discuss, where the state's going and how we can help and once again be a resource. So what I want to do, Harold, is I want to take your particular questions and I want to do a little bit more research on that. And please give me a little bit of time to get back to you on that. But I have your email address based on your participation today. So yes. I will be back in touch with you on your particular question. And I can even circle back around with Leslie and let her know what that answer is too, so that everybody can know. Okay?
Yeah, I think it's good timing because maybe it's something we can propose in the coming legislative session in January, bring it up for consideration. Thank you.
And Leslie, one other thing I'll get you a copy of that P157, that part 1 and 2 that passed committee, because the other thing I'll be developing is a hot topics page on our PMG website with all of this. And I will be developing an adoptable amendment to say the 24, 21, 18 codes, where if a community wanted to, they could take what was approved by the code committee for the 2027 codes and put it in maybe a previous edition of our international plumbing code and international residential code moving forward, so that we don't have to wait for the 27s to come out.
Okay. Yeah. I appreciate you saying that, because that was kind of my kind of concluding question on this is kind of where it's going next. So this is 2021, but it's recently released because you went back and compiled from the 2021 codes once they're developed. So it sounds like you'll do the same thing again based on the 2024 codes that are being approved now. And even looking ahead towards the 2027 in the next iteration here?
Yes, ma'am. Actually, we're currently actually having some discussions about what the process should be to develop this, and we're currently exploring that within our rules that govern our ICC, right? And how we develop codes or standards, which one might be the right path for this to move forward on. So stand by, because we haven't made a final decision, but the effort's not going to stop in 21. We're going to continue this for 24, 27, moving on through the years, because we see the value in it.
All right, that sounds great. And I'd love to hear kind of what some of those decisions are.
Yes.
And you know, because we're doing this regional resilience code, that, you know, one of the options was looking at doing it like this, like an overlay where you're pulling from existing code elements across different members of the iCode family. But very likely there will be pieces where we'll want to be stronger than the existing code. And there's discussions about having tiers so that you are, as you were saying, you know, not making it a one size fit all, but you're supporting like a variation in desired performance by municipalities. And so we're asking a lot of those same questions. And so it'd be interesting to hear kind of where you land and, you know, how we can learn from those conversations. And we got to chat, just a reminder, to put the PowerPoint in. If for some reason you can't drop it in the chat, you've got my email, just send it to me and I will definitely send it out. And then one more question. Is there anything in the 2024 code set that is more stringent than the IWCCP?
I do not know at this point in time. You know, there was no, in the IRC, the 2024, we now limit the distance of the hot water piping from the source. I believe we went with 100 feet. So we're going back to what it was in the past, not 50 feet like commercial buildings. But that's one thing that has changed. And unfortunately, because of moving the IECC from our normal code development to our standard process, it took a little longer than we originally thought. So I haven't done a deep dive into those IECC provisions for the 2024 as it pertains to water distribution and hot water. So I don't know yet. I'm still trying to figure it out. But I'd love to come back and talk about it sometimes if you guys want me back. Okay.
We'd love to have you as this moves forward. Come let us know where it's going, because I do think it's going to be a key element in some form or fashion in what we're trying to do here. So, well, thank you so much, Richard. Just send anything to me that you want to pass along to the group. I'm happy to do that. And now we're going to transition over. Kevin, you want to introduce the next speaker and topic really quickly?
Yeah, thanks, Richard. Up next is another NBIer, Liepa Bracciolute. And Liepa is covering our extreme heat and urban heat island code overlay. So Liepa, take it away. Thanks.
Thanks, Kevin. Let me remember how to share in Teams.
There should be a little button, white button up on the top or somewhere on your screen, white. Yep. There you go.
Showing it's still loading from my side. Okay. Can you just see the full presentation mode, nothing else?
Yeah.
Yep, that looks good.
Okay, great. So yeah, as Kevin said, my name is Liepa Bracciolite. I'm a project analyst of Codes and Policy at New Buildings Institute. And I'll be presenting a little bit today about the extreme heat and urban heat island code overlay that NBI has published really recently, about a month ago. So I included some slides here, like an introduction to extreme heat. I don't think you all really need it, especially in Arizona. You know about extreme heat much more than we do. There's a lot of health impacts of extreme heat. It limits our ability to cool off. Certain medications reduce the ability to cool off. And during extreme heat, also some medications are less effective. There's a lot of impacts of extreme heat, including reduced air quality, increased energy use, greenhouse gas emissions, and higher energy bills, and even increased wear and tear of building surfaces and pavements from higher temperature fluctuations. So there's a lot of co-harms of extreme heat and a lot of, on the flip side, co-benefits of mitigating it. So NBI completed a few listening sessions with community-based organizations around the country. And we learned that, especially after COVID, a lot of people do prefer to shelter in place during extreme heat. Cooling centers, of course, are still helpful, but majority of people do prefer to stay at home, hence why we need to help people make sure that their homes are a safe place to stay. And also many federal funding sources like LIHEAP, they don't prioritize cooling. They, in fact, most of their money goes to heating, even though cooling is much more deadlier. So there's a lot of advocacy on the state and federal side that's needed. However, for this project, we did focus primarily on new construction. So unfortunately, some of this we weren't able to implement. So here's a cover page of the NBI's Extreme Heat and Urban Heat Island Code Overlay. It includes language for cool roofs and walls, cool and permeable pavement, trees and vegetation, and the maximum temperature set point, which is basically like a maximum temperature that a building is allowed to reach when it's constructed. Some building codes already have a minimum temperature set point to protect people during extreme cold events, but they don't have one yet for extreme heat. And in this code overlay, we included a variety of different codes listed here, including some energy codes, some building codes, and a green code. And I think the previous speaker, Richard, already kind of covered this. His resource is also kind of like a code overlay, even though you can call it a different way. It's basically a code language or code provisions that modifies an existing code, whether it's a model code such as IECC or IBC, or it could also modify a local or state energy code. And NBI has created several other code overlays, including like the embodied carbon building code, the building decarb code, you name it. So I wanted to go over some of the strategies we included in the code overlay. We included cool roofs and cool walls. Here we show white colored roofs and walls, but they can be many different colors, including brown and red, because there's roofs and walls that reflect colors that are, or reflect light that's invisible to the human eye. So a roof can be cool even though it's still kind of dark, if that makes sense. And other strategies we include is cool pavement. Here on the left, you can see that it was a pavement that was covered in a slightly more reflective pavement, and the temperature of the surface temperature reduced by 9 degrees. On the right side, there's a photo of porous pavement on the left, non-porous pavement on the left and porous pavement on the right. And just from that image, you can see the difference of how porous pavement can reduce flooding and improve stormwater runoff. We also included trees and vegetation. We know that neighborhoods with older trees are several degrees cooler than newer neighborhoods that have no trees or very young trees. And we also included a maximum indoor temperature set point to protect people. And since there's already a cold or a minimum indoor temperature set point, it makes sense to have a maximum one. So here's a summary of the strategies we included in the code overlay and in which code they went into. So we included 3 types of codes: energy codes, and their priority is increasing energy efficiency in buildings. They include ASHRAE 90.1, which is mostly for commercial buildings, and the IECC, which has both residential and commercial provisions. And then there's the green code, or the ASHRAE 189.1, or the International Green Construction Code. They're kind of the same thing, to simplify it. And for the green code, the priority or the goal is to reduce the environmental impact of buildings. So for that one, you can have a bigger array, a wider array of provisions. Like you can start talking about trees and have cool pavement, things that might not necessarily reduce energy consumption in a building, but will definitely help the environmental impact of it. And then the third category of codes is building codes, which includes the IBC, the building code, the residential code, and the mechanical code. In all three, we included the maximum temperature set point, since all three already have the minimum temperature set point. Here's an example, like an excerpt of the code overlay language. The underlying language shows new language we've added, and then the little paragraph of italicized language below explains the changes, the reasoning, and any research that we can use to back it up. Here's like a quick summary of some of the changes in the code language that I kind of covered already. I'll move forward. So from a quick look on Arizona and Tucson specifically, I saw that Arizona has no statewide energy code, so it seems like it's more implemented locally. But the city of Tucson has passed 2018 ICC with amendments. So the city does have cool roof requirements for commercial low-sloped roofs in climate zones 1 through 3. So potential future considerations, cool roofs requirements can be added for residential and steep sloped roofs and include climate zone 4. They could consider cool wall requirements. And for this project, if it's not strictly an energy code, but can also be included as a green code, we can consider having some pavement requirements, cooler permeable pavement. And so this code overlay also, it's written as a building or energy code, but the language can be implemented in other policy pathways also. It can be implemented as a zoning code, a housing code, or maybe a program or incentive. So here's some examples of how different cities or jurisdictions have implemented extreme heat mitigation strategies in different ways. So like the DC housing code has a maximum temperature set point. Baltimore's building code includes cool roof requirements. Sacramento has a zoning code requirement for trees and parking lots. The Hawaii Energy Code has a provision for an exception for wall insulation for cool walls, and Phoenix, Arizona has a cool pavement program. So thank you. I also wanted to share, I was at a conference last week and I got this little booklet. Oh, if you can see it, never mind, you can't see it. I'll send a photo. And it's about extreme heat preparedness in Arizona. It's the 2024 recommendations report to the Office of the Governor. And I imagine you're probably aware of it, but I can probably find it online also and send it. So thank you.
Thank you, Leipa. And we've got at least one question here, Jonathan.
Thanks so much for your presentation, and I'm going to be super wonky, so I apologize. But I think there are a couple of like really important points that I just want to bring into the conversation at this point, because I feel like sometimes they enter a little bit late or too late to be helpful. So I think there are three points I'd like to make. Could you go to slide 12, please? Thanks. And I just, Leipa, for you to know, I'm representing the Institute for Energy Solutions at the University of Arizona, and we're going to be helping with the Living Implementation Guide to actually help people put this into practice. So like one of the first and probably the most wonky question I have is whether or not the embodied carbon impact of additional shading was considered when this code language was developed. I was wondering if you know that, because adding structural elements to buildings, like things like overhangs or shading, makes a lot of intuitive sense because it prevents the outside sun from coming into the building. But there are lots and lots of different ways to do that. And some of those like require really energy and carbon intensive materials like concrete or steel, and a lot of them to be added to the building. And there are other ways of doing it, like planting a tree that require less materials and energy, but require other things that we don't have tons of, like water, for example. And I'm just curious about that kind of like whole picture, like life cycle calculation. Was that considered here in these recommendations?
Yeah, so in short, it was not part of the consideration. And but on the flip side, I think you're right that most shading, like to meet shading requirements, usually trees are used, or in the like cover, when you cover a parking lot, it has a multi-use often. Like maybe it has solar panels on top, or it has another use, and that's what I've seen often when they have multi-uses. So, and that helps save on costs also. Yeah, that's a quick answer.
Great. And I think like the lesson for all of us as we're moving forward with this would be to like be conscious of that. And like maybe we even need to go beyond this and specify or suggest that the ways that things are shaded have those multiple functions, so that we're not just adding a lot of cost in terms of financial cost or carbon cost to buildings, because you can really pile it on fast.
Agreed. Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think in most code provisions, it's either you have to like have a reflective wall or cover that wall with some shade.
Right.
So, yeah.
The second point, and I think you mentioned like there was a slide with the city of Phoenix requiring reflective pavement, and then you're requiring other requirements for reflective glass. Just again, like most of us in Tucson and in Arizona, Phoenix, if you've been to Phoenix, been to Tucson in the summer, like all of this reflective stuff is good, but you can't destroy heat. You just sort of move it someplace else. So sometimes these reflective surfaces are bouncing heat out into places where we don't care, we want to, like a roof is bouncing the heat back out into outer space, which is great. Like that's where it goes. But on a vertical surface, when we reflect heat, or on a horizontal surface like a road or a sidewalk, if you're reflecting heat and light, right, it's coming back and potentially at people. So I just also wanted to highlight that, or onto other buildings. There have been some really high profile examples of builders, I think in the Midwest, using high performance windows that are quite reflective, and the windows, because they're a little bit concave when they're made, it's double pane windows because there's a vacuum inside. They get sucked in a little bit, so those windows act like big magnifying glasses, like, and bounce the energy from the sun onto the neighboring house, and have actually like melted the vinyl siding, in big subdivisions. So like I just want to again remind people that all that energy has to go someplace, and it's another thing to just sort of be, the devil is in the details, I guess, a little bit.
Yeah, that's horrible. I imagine the glass really, that's not a great option. I think also like things like trees, they block the sun, or they block a lot of the sun from trickling down. So oftentimes that's like an ideal way to reduce that impact.
Yeah, trees are fantastic. And again, it's like one of these like I'm trying to find here. Oh, here it is. I'll have to follow up with the link. I don't have it handy here. The last, and this is a little bit of I've written about this. It's related to again, that experience of heat. The way that we, and I've just posted this in the chat, the way that we as human beings experience heat is partially through the ambient air temperature, which is how we generally refer to something. Like if it feels really hot, we'll just say, oh, it's 115 degrees outside. But the actual dynamics of that experience have to do with the air temperature, the humidity, and also the temperature of all the surfaces around us. And so we also have an opportunity here to be pretty, to create some better results if we're thinking about that radiant environment, that both inside the buildings and outside the building. So the bouncing heat off the building might reduce the building's energy use, but make the outside really miserable to experience. And likewise, you can do some things to improve energy use, especially in existing buildings, but they may not actually yield an interior environment that feels that much more comfortable. So I think that's just something, one more kind of nuanced detail that like we've got the opportunity to think about up front, and that is especially important in places where like Tucson and Phoenix, where it gets really, really hot. And it will help, you know, if you're in Flagstaff, it'll also help if you're on the other end of the scale when it's really cold outside. These things all kind of work in reverse in the same direction. So, but thanks for raising these examples to us. And I'm like, it's so nice to see this level of thought going in at this side of the process. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your comments and your questions. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and Jonathan, this whole conversation really highlights the challenge of addressing heat with specifically the building code. I participated in some of the early stakeholder discussions that NBI organized. They had a Southwest cohort here. And I know the intention was to lean more heavily in the building code direction. And in those early discussions, people keep coming back to site, keep coming back to trees. And so, and you know, permeable pavement and you know, cool pavements. And so we think about these kind of more site related solutions. And I think there's a big gap and an opportunity for us to try to figure out how you do that with the building code separately, and how does that work in dovetail with site considerations. So I think we're going to have many interesting discussions ahead of us over the next couple of years. So, all right. Well, thank you, Lepa. Really appreciate if you're willing to share your PowerPoint slides, that would be great. You can just email them to me, and I will share them with the group. So not to put you on the spot, Courtney, but since you were able to make the call, I didn't put it on as a presentation because I know you had a potential conflict, but I put kind of a placeholder for the Net Zero Urban Water Project in case you wanted to say a few words about what you're doing and kind of what you see, maybe some potential dovetail with the work that we're trying to do here. Courtney's the director for the Drockman Institute at University of Arizona. And as an organization, they do a lot of work with the city, and particularly our planning and development services department. And so really excited to have recently learned about this work that Courtney's doing.
Oh, thanks so much, Leslie. I appreciate, it's been wonderful to hear everyone's presentations. And like Leslie said, I'm the director of the Drockman Institute at University of Arizona. I'm a colleague of Jonathan Bean too. So Jonathan, nice to see you. And the project that Leslie mentioned is it's a project that we started, I think, back in 2019, but we currently have a 4-year National Science Foundation grant. And it's a research coordination network. So it's with University of Arizona and Tucson Water and the city here, but it's also we also our other partners are at University of New Mexico and San Bernardino Water Authority, Denver Water, and Colorado State University and Colorado School of Mines, and UCLA and LADWP. So and the project is to look at basically cross-cutting challenges to achieving a net zero urban water future in the Southwest. And so we're looking at those 4 cities, Tucson, Albuquerque, Denver, and Los Angeles. And here specifically in Tucson, we've also been contracted by Pima County Planning and Development Services to look at a net zero water ordinance that would be implemented through new land use entitlements. And so then concurrently, we're wondering if something similar could be done in the city. Our efforts right now are concentrating on, we have a series of workshops. So we have 2 more years on the grant, and we've published a couple papers about, one was just on the concept of net zero urban water, and then one recently was on the policy and governance challenges across the Southwest. So, you know, thinking this would be interesting to the group. It is, of course, like water is one of these things that's like across scale. And so especially when we're talking about cities that are depending on imported water, have river compact agreements, and, you know, there's a lot of complexities there. So it's something that, you know, policy certainly goes across federal to state to, you know, all the way down to local. and building codes. So I think this work is super exciting. Leslie told me a little bit about it, so I'm just learning a little bit more about it. I think, you know, potentially some of the research, Leslie asked, like, how might like the work that we're doing maybe interface with some of the work that you guys are doing. We're working on our large net zero urban water model for the city and county to try to nail down how you would structure such an ordinance, particularly related to like offset credits, the calculation of projected water use for new land use entitlements, and then trying to understand, you know, how big an in lieu fee would be, and then how you structure that in lieu fee in relationship to what that in lieu fee might also be paying for. So I think it sounds like there's some similar discussions that are being had, and so I assume like the research that we're doing and anything that we find out maybe could be helpful. And then I know that you guys are doing like a large survey and things like that, and I'd be super interested just to even know what kind of questions you're asking in the survey, and if there's anything that where we might be able to work together to find some common solutions or answer some similar questions. Is that good, Leslie, or is there anything else? Yeah. Oh, you're still muted.
Yep. No, that's fantastic. And sorry to put you on the spot just to explain, but I was just super excited about the work you're doing, in part because we're doing this net zero roadmap, and the group wants water to be a part of it in addition to energy, something that will go beyond just building code to policy and other considerations for communities that, want to really figure out how to do this transition. And the fact that you're doing such detailed work around asking those policy questions of like, how do you get there? Like, how do you set up a system, I think could be particularly helpful. We don't all have the same circumstances. We've got communities in Arizona and New Mexico. We have big cities. We've got rural communities. Not everyone has an allocation necessarily from the Colorado River. But I think the thinking around what you're trying to do could be a really good model. And really appreciate all three of you, because what we're trying to do, I think, is pretty big and pretty ambitious, and it's really important. I mean, going back to something Richard said at the beginning is, basically not reinventing the wheel and learning from the great work that other people are doing, and just learning about all three of these things over the last, less than a month has been really exciting to add to the toolbox of things that we can build from. So as we unfortunately still wait for our final paperwork from DOE, greatly appreciate you three coming in and providing such informative discussions about the kinds of work that are happening that we can potentially leverage. So very much appreciate that. So we're down to last couple minutes. I do want to, let me go back to our agenda real quick. Let's see. I always have trouble sharing that direction. Let's see. There we go. So really quick on the workforce development grant proposal, our concept paper's in. We do hope that all the jurisdictions in this collaborative are willing to be a supporter of that, since this was originally part of this RECU proposal that we had to remove. I'm still getting my my final letter of commitment templates out. So I'll hopefully, finger crossed, get templates out tomorrow along with the concept paper, so you guys can take a look at it. The final application is not due until June 6th. So there's definitely some time to get those done. We're looking at, trying to get letters by the end of May. And and we have some upcoming kind of coordination meetings. I know everyone here is super, super busy, so I didn't want to just throw meetings into your calendars. But if anyone is interested in being part of one of these discussions, either what we call the all region meetings, we've got 2 of those. It's a quote unquote statewide approach, but we're taking kind of a little bit of a specialization across the 3 regions that are represented, North, Central, and South. So in addition to a couple of all region coordinations, we have kind of more focused discussions in those 3 specific regions. And so if you're interested, if your jurisdiction falls in one of those 3 and you'd like to participate, just reach out, let me know, and you're welcome to join the discussion. And then really quickly, so hopefully, as Kevin thinks, we'll get our paperwork next week before the end of the month. So ideally, our May meeting would be a report out on the National Energy Codes Collaborative Kickoff, which is at the National Energy Codes Conference, May 6th through 8th. Hopefully at that time, we will have good news about the award and some plans around how we're going to address the delay. We've mentioned maybe a 3 to 6 months shift so that we, we have adequate time to do the things we need to do. We're still kind of to be determined on meetings after that, simply because we're waiting on the paperwork and then we'll have to see where we go from there. But there's a bunch of stuff in the queue. We are starting to ramp up some of those conversations. Got a code development process one scheduled in a couple of weeks. So things are still happening. We will keep you all posted. Appreciate everyone's patience and participation in all of this. I mentioned the National Energy Conservation Code. I did do a recorded podcast for U.S. Green Building Council. That is in production. It's not out yet. I will send it to you when I get it. ICC Four Corners group met here late March. That was super great. Mike Baxley was here. Don Brown with Phoenix really said great words about our project. There were a lot of communities represented. So it was really kind of great to get the word out there. So, all right, we're at 2 o'clock. Thank you all. I'll get recording out, notes out, all of that to you, and look forward to talking to you, if not before, in May.
Thank you all.
Thank you,
Great
Leslie.
information today.
Thank you.
Thanks, Leslie.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.